Hello, this is now Module 1 of the Six Sigma and Organization. And the topics in this module will be Six Sigma and organizational goals, in which case we will look at both the value of Six Sigma, the organization goals, and how they relate to Six Sigma projects, as well as organizational drivers and metrics. We'll follow on with a discussion of lean principles in the organization, including lean concepts, and the difference between value-added and non-value-added activities, which is key to not only the lean movement, but also to the Six Sigma. And then we'll finish off with design for Six Sigma, what's known as DFSS, a very key concept. We'll have a look over the roadmap for DFSS, and then we will review the roadmap for DFSS. We'll then discuss basic failure modes and effects analysis, or what is known as FMEA. And we will look at the differences between design FMEA and process FMEA. We'll start off with Six Sigma and organizational goals. First, I'll talk about why do we want to do Six Sigma and Lean in the first place? Well, they are continuous improvement and process improvement methodologies. Every organization strives to make more money, save money, win over more market share. And in order to do that, it has to address its pain points, the things that get in the way of it making a profit. Or reduce the expenses, things that get in the way of customer satisfaction, because as we all know, it takes 5 times as much money to find a new customer as to retain an existing customer. And the best form of advertising, of course, is word of mouth. And if your processes are not good and your customers are not happy, it's also the best form of anti-advertising. For if people do not like your services, they will let people know. So we will talk about the origins of Six Sigma and how it came out of the various pain points that people found in various industrial processes. We'll talk about its goals and philosophy. We'll talk about why an organization would want to do Six Sigma. And we'll talk about how processes, input and outputs, and feedbacks affect an organization. How we talk about the system as a whole. So what is Six Sigma? Well, it comes from the Greek letter sigma, which is like that, which represents standard deviation. So Six Sigma literally translates into 6 standard deviations. If you're looking at a normal curve of a histogram, you have your mean right in the middle. You would have 3 standard deviations this way, 3 standard deviations that way. Together, that range is Six Sigma. It's best defined as a systematic, data-driven approach that seeks to find and eliminate causes of mistakes or defects in business processes by focusing on the outputs that are of critical importance to the customer. Now, the key concept here is to the customer. Who defines the value? Who defines importance? It is not the CEO, it's not the board of directors, it's not the managers, it's not the people working on the shop floor, or in the offices. It is the customer. And that is the one thing you have to focus on, is the customer comes first, and what the customer considers to be valuable is what is valuable. What constitutes quality in the eyes of the customer is what is quality. So, yeah, it basically includes business strategy, and the strategy is based on the concept of operational excellence. We're always striving to do better than we did the last time, to do it faster, cheaper, better quality. We want to delight our customers. We want them to be enthused by what we do. We want to actually totally focus on delivering value along the way, creating a value stream, and basically look for where the pain points is, and never just say it's good enough. It can always be better. It can always be better. And we'll get more into that when we talk about Kaizen and the whole concept of always find one thing to improve each day. And then, of course, to do that, we have to have tools and tactics, methods and processes. We need to be able to measure our processes, because if we don't know where we are, how do we know where we need to go? And then we also have to have means of analyzing these measurements to see where our problems are, what we need to do in order to make them better, and then produce a plan to do so. And there's a whole life cycle known as DMAIC, which we will go into, and which also forms the foundational, I guess, the backbone, if I may say, of the certification exam, because there's a section in each exam for each of the, define, measure, analyze, improve, and control parts of the DMAIC cycle. And we'll look at a few other cycles too that are more focused towards when you're developing new products. So it was developed in the late 80s by Motorola in response to the struggle to meet their quality targets for complex manufactured products. Although its roots are far earlier in that, in the works way back, they were done by Deming, which we'll get into a little later. And initially, it was it was a quality measurement approach based on statistical principles. You counted all your defects per million, how many defects per million you had, how many defects per part you had. You ran them through some various statistical tests, and then from there you moved on. It really became widely known when Jack Welch at GE adopted it in 1994 and really championed it to great results. It was then transformed into disciplined process improvement techniques based on reducing variation within the system with the help of a number of statistical tools. And from there, after the variation was reduced, they worked on quality. Because first of all, you had to reach a place of statistical control. In other words, make sure that you have no variation, because if your numbers are all over the place, how do you know where you have a problem? But if basically you have a very tight spread on your numbers, then you can focus, okay, we seem to really have a quality issue here, and then you can focus your efforts on there. Over the years, it was melded with the lean movement, and together there's been more and more of that sort of synergy there between lean, focusing on continuous improvement, and Six Sigma, focusing on individual process improvement. And the roots lie in the work of some key folks, which we'll get into in the next few slides. Crosby, Edwards, Deming, Schubert, Feigenbaum, Duran, Ishikawa, and Taguchi. So Crosby was authored a book called Quality is Free, which is actually one of the actual seminal texts of quality control. Basically, his focus is do it right the first time. Build quality in, do not inspect it in. You may have heard of that saying. It's based on his work. He had 4 quality rules. Basically, your standard should be 0 defects. You cannot accept any level of defects. That's just, you don't do that. You just, okay, well, we're okay. 95% of our stuff is good. The other 5% isn't. Well, you just alienated 5% of your customer base. Quality is the same thing as conformance to requirements. And by that he meant you have to really come up with some solid requirements. What is your product specification? What is it supposed to do? What, requirements as far as the materials, how it's built, how it's stored, how it's shipped, anything that can impact the quality along the way. Because unless you're building to a spec, you're going to have variation, and the variation, half the time it's going to be bad. Half the time it may be good, but you really want to basically focus on that. And we'll talk about that in the later modules when we talk about standard work and that key concept from the lean movement, where everything is standardized so you know exactly what you're producing and there is no room for error. And you achieve quality by preventing defects. Well, it seems maybe self-evident. But in a lot of organizations, they inspect for quality. They will look at a part, and if it's defective, they will throw it into this bin. The part will then be reworked and pushed back out again. Well, there's wasted effort. You have somebody looking at this part, determining if it needs to be sent back for rework. Then you have the rework. That adds costs, the concept of the hidden factory, where there's all this extra work that does not need to be done. We'll talk a little bit later about the hidden factory. So, what you want to do is build quality in, as I've said. And of course, the measure of quality's value is the cost of nonconformance. okay, if I build a quality item, I do not have to inspect it. I do not have to send it back for rework, or worse still, missed that there's a quality issue. It goes out there. The customer, it breaks down in the customer's hand. The customer has to send it back for warranty work. There's a whole cost in there, both a quantitative cost of the dollar cost of having that item returned and fixed, and the qualitative cost of basically upsetting a customer, because the customer now does not have this part or item that they needed, and they have to wait. And if there's a vehicle, for example, it's in the shop, they can't use it. If it's a microwave, well, they've had to send that back. So these are also very, very key things. In software world, for example, there's an established paradigm that says, the farther down along the line that you find the bug, the more expensive it is. And the curve goes exponentially like this. If you catch a quality issue when you're gathering your requirements, it's very cheap. But if it's out in the wild and your customers have it, it's very expensive. What we want to do is we want to make sure we deal with everything over here, not there. Edwards, he was the first president of the American Society for Quality. That is the organization that is actually you will be certifying through. He was the head of inspection engineering for Bell Telephone, and he was instrumental in developing their quality assurance program. He was one of the key players. Demings is probably the absolute father of the whole lean and quality movement. His key insight was the use of statistics for quality control. He also saw the difference between common and special cause variation, and that is key. Sometimes something happens out of the blue. Okay, we have a power bump from to our system and burns out a piece of electronics. Well, that's a special cause variation. Our production drops because there's a flu epidemic. Well, that's special cause. But then there are common cause variations caused by our parts that we're buying from a supplier. Some of them may be in good shape, some of them may be okay, some of them may be slightly defective. That causes variations in material quality, variation between one shift and another shift. This person using the machine is very good at it. The next person is maybe average at it. Somebody maybe not so good. Or even other things like that. It was an interesting story that happened out of Pratt & Whitney. They were milling turbine blades for jet engines. And on one shift, they were actually having high quality. On the next shift, at this particular process, the quality was very poor. And they investigated that and found out the problem is that one of the workers on that shift was short, and they couldn't reach up high enough to do a proper setting on the machine. And so they were able to determine that and then cure the problem by providing this person a little stool. They could stand up and fix that. He was also well known for defining the 7 deadly diseases of the workplace and the 14 points for management. And these are very key concepts that basically permeate the entire Lean and Six Sigma movement. The 7 deadly diseases, of course, is lack of consistency in planning. If we say, okay, we're going to maybe plan well over here, but over here we're doing ad hoc, we're doing firefighting. One manager says one thing, another manager counters with something else, and there's no sense of a direction within the organization. It'll be a lot of wasted effort, which will result in quality issues. It'll result in absolute large ranges of variation depending who's running a shift or which plant you're in. And all in all, it's never a good thing. Emphasis on short-term profits. This is key. People will say, okay, it's cheaper for us to let this problem out the door and have our customers deal with it than totally retool, because then it'll cut our profits for the quarter and for the year. And of course, my bonuses from my stock options won't be as high, so therefore let's let that slide. And sometimes that's going to be very egregious because it can actually cause a loss of life. Many years ago, there was a model of car called a Pinto. produced by Ford Motor Corporation. It had a defective gas tank, and they decided it would cost less to settle lawsuits from people who were injured or killed by that than to fix it. Well, fortunately for the rest of us, and unfortunately for them, that memo was leaked, and they had to pay a very severe price for that, and really cost them a lot of customer goodwill for a long time. So you always need to focus on the long term. It's often better to spend some money now, and you'll reap far greater rewards down the line. As the old saying goes, stop and sharpen the axe. Poor performance evaluation systems. There's an old rule with that you get the behavior you incent. If we evaluate our employees on, say, saving money or on how fast a call is made, take, for example, a call center, you'll receive your bonus if you can terminate the call within a few minutes. Well, the price is that maybe the customer is not getting their problem dealt with properly. Yeah, far better to incent your employees on the quality on quality as a whole, on the quality of the customer experience, not on how fast you can do something, how much money you can save, what sort of turnaround you can get, because often you're incenting the wrong behavior and will cause all sorts of variation or other quality issues. A case in point, in the software industry, there was bonus money was paid in one organization for focusing entirely on Y2K work to the detriment of some other key products that really needed to be worked on. Turnover among your employees. Again, this is a symptom of some of the other ones. If you have poor planning, short-term planning, your evaluation systems is poor, your employees are not going to be happy, they will leave, they will go somewhere else, a better run organization, and that turnover, with that you lose that organizational knowledge, the knowledge of the processes, the knowledge of the procedures. You then have wasted time and effort training people up to the new opportunity, to learn how to do the job at hand. Therefore, that is also a deadly sin. Over-reliance on the metrics that are easiest to obtain, the low-hanging fruit. Okay, we've got some easy numbers here. Let's focus on those numbers. And you basically may be treating some symptoms rather than the disease itself. If you spent a little more time digging below the surface, a little more effort, a little more money, you might find out what the real issue is and solve it. But rather, you just do this again. It falls down to short-term thinking, which is never a good thing. Excessive medical costs and excessive liability costs. Medical costs, especially in the United States, is very high. And of course, related to that are your workman's compensation payments. If you have a high-risk workplace, you have a lot of accidents due to poor training, poor organization of your workplace, that will drive up those costs. Liability costs, again, if you produce a poor quality product like Ford did, that people are killed or injured, or if not that drastic, if the product causes another product to fail, performance clauses within contracts will kick in. You will actually have increased costs that way. And of course, if you improve your quality, your liability costs will of course drop. 17 points for management was as follows: maintain consistent purposes. Again, across the board, from top to bottom, side to side, everybody should be focused on what is the goal for the organization: to please our customers, to provide a high quality, valuable product that meets our customers' needs. Anything else is commentary or irrelevant. Adapt a new philosophy. Just because we've always done it this way doesn't make it good. I mean, if it wasn't for innovation, if it wasn't for growth, if it wasn't for thinking outside of the box, we'd all still be living in caves. Eliminate dependence on inspection. As I was saying earlier, you build quality in, you do not inspect it, because If you build the quality in, you do not have to do rework. Rework is waste. It eats up resources. It's that hidden factory, which basically draws resources away from your main productive activities. Cease to award business on price alone, because as the old saying goes, you get what you pay for. If you go for the lowest bidder all the time, you will end up with a product quality issues. You'll end up with a product that barely does what it's supposed to do. You'll end up with nothing, but in the long run, it'll be far more expensive. You'll have to find new suppliers. You'll have to increase warranty costs if you add that in. Or you can have a really nice little a public relations fiasco like healthcare.gov, as for instance. Again, constant quality improvement. Always strive to do it better, more efficient, and more economically, and consistent with quality. In Kaizen, they say, not a day should go by without an improvement. And this is a very key concept. Provide on-the-job training for your employees. Again, it's part of the whole standardized work, which we'll talk about in a later module. If your employees have consistent training, know how to do their job, it'll reduce the amount of defects you will produce. It'll also reduce the amount of accidents. It'll have a safer workplace. It'll increase your throughput and productivity, because they will not be fumbling around. They will not be looking for tools. They will not be sort of thinking what they need to do next. Do not skimp on training. Eliminate fear. If you want true quality improvement, you have to create an environment where your employees can speak their mind, can point out issues, can point out where there's a problem that needs to be fixed, or a process that needs to be changed. They have to be able to admit when you actually are looking at your processes that we're not doing it according to the book because there's a problem with how it's in the book. We're doing it our own way. So they have to have an environment where people are allowed to speak their mind and where they're also allowed to make mistakes. Reduce interdepartmental barriers. You got to get rid of the silos. Otherwise, you end up reinventing the wheel. Key communication doesn't get across. Certain synergies you can gain by maybe combining processes, and also even just basic information, understanding of how your whole value chain works through your organization will be blocked if you have these interdepartmental barriers. Reduce the pressure on your workforce. Eliminate quotas. Quotas may seem, oh yeah, well, we were focusing on throughput. But quite often to make quotas, people will cut corners. You'll have quality issues. We'll have issues of variance. If the people are rushing, could have accidents, and increasing your issues with workplace safety. Quotas are never a good thing. Or your customers' experience will be affected. The classic example of the call centers, where they say, okay, we have to answer, say, 20 customer calls an hour, giving you only 3 minutes per customer. Whatever problem takes more than that, you rush the person through, you do not solve their problem, they're upset, they have to call back a second time. It just impacted your customer's experience. Quotas are a bad thing. Eliminate ineffective management styles. This is a classic. You have to create an environment where people can be self-actualized, an environment where people are motivated and empowered to affect change within their organization. You want to run a Theory Y organization where you basically expect all your employees to rise to the occasion. You expect great things from them. You do not want to create a Theory X corporation that's based on fear and demoralization and disempowerment. Related to that, promote employee pride. Make them proud of themselves and the work they do. Help them see where the difference they're making. Help them feel pride around their workstation by engaging in the 5 S's, which we'll talk about later on. So they have a nice, clean workstation that's well organized and they can take pride in that. Give them a sense of pride in their own skills, because employees that are proud of what they do will stay with the organization. They'll be empowered. They'll actually be motivated to bring up suggestions and ways to improve your processes. Institute a vigorous program of education and self-improvement. Again, you want to make sure your employees are properly trained, and you also want to make sure that your organization as a whole takes on new processes and basically improves themselves. Make sure your people have Lean and Six Sigma training so they can understand and have that viewpoint. Now, we'll go on to Shewart. He formulated the statistical idea of tolerance intervals and to propose his data presentation rules, which are listed below. And the first key one is data is meaningless without context. I mean, yeah, I got a bunch of numbers, so what? What does it mean? I mean, you have to have the context of where this data was drawn from, what problem you're trying to address and solve, what are the symptoms that you've been seeing at a qualitative level, and then and only then can you look at this number and derive some meaning from it. And he said the data also has signal and noise, and you have to be able to extract the information and separate it from the noise. By that he meant that, okay, I'm recording, say, certain variations there, and some of it may be very key in focusing toward the problems. Other of it maybe have nothing to do with anything. It could be the weather, it could be power bumps. Again, it could be sort of like these special variances that can come along. And you have to be able to separate those from the real data. And he originated the plan, do, check, act cycle popularized by Deming. I don't know, many people think that Deming invented the plan, do, check, act cycle. However, it was Shewart, but he collaborated with Deming, and Deming was the one that really popularized it in Japan and later in North America. Feigenbaum developed total quality management. He's also known for his 9 M's of quality: your market, management, manpower, money, motivation, materials, machine, and modern information sources, and mounting product requirements. In other words, constantly improving product requirements. Basically, he said you have to look at all of these items to get a full picture of your quality, of any variance, of where you're at, and of what you needed to do, and how you exploit the 9 M's in order to get done what you need to do. In other words, your management have a modern outlook? Are they focused on quality improvement? Are they willing to be honest with what's going on in the department? Are they in CYA mood? Your personnel, are they well trained, properly trained? Are they motivated? Do they have pride? Are they empowered? Do you have sufficient money to engage in quality improvement? And yes, you do, because just look at all the money you're already wasting on poor quality and variation. If you take that money and redirect it towards quality improvement, you'll be better off in the long run. Motivation, again, that comes back to your management and your personnel. Do they have the motivation to change? Is there an environment that creates that motivation? Or is everybody just, I'm just going to do my job, I don't care, I get my paycheck, who cares? You have to give a sense of engagement. Are you engaging your personnel? Your materials, okay, you have to look at the materials you have. Is the quality sufficient, or we're just buying the cheapest stuff out there and then we don't care what happens next? How about your machinery? Does it support? Are your machines in your plant new, or your computers, if you're looking at office processes, are they new enough that they support what you're trying to do? Or are you trying to get by with stuff that really should have been long since retired? Modern information sources. Do you have access to the kind of information you need to get the feedback loops? Both are your machines modern enough to actually have computer digitize the information that's being outputted from the machine itself? Can you trap that? How about your other processes? And again, are you focused on constant improvement? Or we want to make our products better, our processes better? Always focusing on, Are we going to do things better today than we did it yesterday? Are we going to do things better tomorrow than we did it today? And never resting on your laurels. And he was one of the first that basically came up with what those, seems blindingly obvious nowadays, that basically it's the customer's perspective to assess all this stuff. The customer is the one and only source of our definition of quality, our one and only source of our definition of value.
Start with new learning now.